This is Chad Kaylore, wave at everybody. And so as you can see in your program, he is on page number 8. Chad is actually the commercial irrigation project manager here at GaliDuArt Nursery. Okay, we're starting to get
Somebody turn it off.
I thought so. I thought something didn't seem right. So we're going to get him set up, and he'll be speaking in just a minute on how to build a simple drip irrigation system for your fig trees or your garden or anything just really simple. You can do this yourself. I know sometimes it's kind of like, oh my gosh, there's math, you know, it's a lot. But he's going to make it simple for us, which is great. He is a graduate of Lee University and has worked in many facets of plumbing and irrigation for years. He worked in irrigation sales and distribution for 12 years at Keeling, and before that he operated his own residential irrigation company. So he's going to teach you how to do that, and you might want to take notes. So there is a place for notes here, and if you look in your goodie bag, there is a handout that has his picture on, his name on the front. I don't think it's your picture. His name is on the front, and he's got graphics for you to look at. So when he's talking about the parts, it is on the page. So you'll need to pull that out. Does everybody see what I'm talking about? Because I don't see anybody with it in their hand. Okay. This gentleman's got it. Let me borrow it. It's this page right here. Okay. Look for this in your goodie bag. This is in your goodie bag. And there is a place to take notes inside your program if you want to do that. Or you can just write on the page, whatever's easier for you. So this is in your goodie bag. Follow along.
All right, can everybody hear me now? Okay, good. As she already said, my name's Chad. I work here at the nursery as the project manager. Most of the irrigation I deal with here is very large, very complicated. Parks, factories, hospitals, schools, stuff like that. We're going to talk about drip and keep it very simple. One of the main things with irrigation for a functioning system is to keep it simple. Products keep coming out that basically reinvent the wheel. I've been in this industry for about 30 years and they keep introducing new products. But the stuff I use mostly, I was using the exact same thing almost 30 years ago. Keep it simple. Anything outside is going to deteriorate in the sun and the rain. The more features it has, the more it's going to tear up on you. The drip irrigation that I'm going to talk about for the figs is the exact same stuff I used 30 years ago. It's simple, still has some failure rates, but it's just tried and true. The stuff I'm going to talk to you about is the same stuff I'd use on a commercial site, a slightly different installation technique, but it's basically the same stuff. So if you want to look in your handout there, I'm going to walk through this in order, explain the parts, explain some different options on each one. First thing you're going to want to do when you go to set up your irrigation system is make sure you have enough water flow and water pressure. Keep it real simple. Just take a 5-gallon bucket, put it under your water faucet, turn your water faucet on. If it fills the bucket up in a minute, nothing else to worry about on water flow. If it fills it up halfway in a minute, you're probably still fine. If you're wanting to irrigate 100 trees 1,000 feet away from your house, there's some math you're going to have to do for that. But if you're trying to irrigate 20, 30, 40 trees 200 or 300 feet from your house, 5 gallons in a minute in the bucket is going to be fine. You can check your pressure if you have a pressure gauge, but honestly on low volume drip, if the water is coming out, you've probably got enough pressure. This drip stuff I'm going to talk about will function fine on 15 pounds of pressure, which is very, very little. Not enough to run a regular rotating spray garden sprinkler, but it will run on the drip. You got the water to work with, 2.5, 3, 4, 5 gallons a minute in your bucket. You're fine. We'll go from there. Off your faucet, you're going to want to put some type of splitter so you can still use your faucet for a regular water hose. My first picture is a two-way splitter. Screws straight onto your faucet. Those two black knobs are cutoffs, so you can leave your drip irrigation on, leave your hose off, or vice versa there. They do also make these where you can have four different service points coming out of it. Don't have a picture of that, but Orbit makes several of those. You do want to try to get it in brass. It's a little more durable than something plastic, and that will be better than if you see a steel one, that will corrode too. So brass is your best option on that. The next thing, after your faucet, after your splitter, if you want, you can put a timer on there. There are 100 versions of faucet timers, anywhere from $15, $20 up to $100+. Once again, on those, keep it simple. Don't get a lot of features. It's just going to go wrong sitting outside in the rain. If you do want to, you can get some that are Bluetooth, where you can control it from your phone. Orbit makes some of the basic ones. I know Hunter and Rainbird make some Bluetooth ones. That is an option. You don't need that, but if you think you'll be traveling and still need to water your plants, you will probably want that, unless you've got a neighbor who'll turn it on and off for you. The faucet timer will screw directly into the faucet. Coming off the bottom is what's called a hose thread. Some of the stuff you'll deal with, I'll get to in a minute, it's going to be a different thread pattern. You'll have to convert it over. But coming off the faucet, you will be on a hose thread. So after your faucet, you can run a garden hose to where you want to start your drip irrigation, or you can start it right there. What you will need to install, I've got a picture, it's the Y-shaped filter. That is a filter and a pressure reducer combined. A lot of times, there's a picture on the back where it's two different parts. On my commercial side, I usually use the integrated in one part. It's just a screen filter and a pressure reducer. The pressure reducer, you're going to want probably 20, 25, 30 pounds, not much more than that. It will start blowing your drip apart a little bit. So the Y we talked about, that's just a generic timer. There are hundreds of models. This one I'll come back to. This is the Y filter I'm talking about. And on the back are two other Y filters. Angel calls those the head units. Those are two pieces. The pressure reducer is one piece. The filter is one piece. There's no advantage to using the one piece or the two piece. It's just more convenient for me in a commercial setting just to use the one piece. There are different filter meshes, not real important. You just want to be able to keep small stuff from clogging your drip emitters. Any plastic one like this is going to be a sufficient mesh size for you. There are some bigger brass ones that would be too large, but on the plastic ones, that's going to be your best bet. Those are $20 range a piece for the combination systems. Okay, once you come out of your hose filter, once you come out of your Y filter, you're probably going to have to change the thread pattern. Now, I have seen some of these that are hose thread in and hose thread out. I've never used any. What you're going to have to change it over to, this is the one little complicated part, is a pipe thread. So this little fitting here, it's made by Spears. It's called an AP106. It is a hose thread converter. It is female hose thread to female pipe thread. You can get variations, female to male, male to female, but you're going to have to convert your pipe thread over. If you see the little black gasket in there, that is on the the hose thread side. Just like when you screw a hose into your faucet, there's an O-ring gasket in there. That's the same thing here. This one does swivel in the middle, so you can tighten each side up. Any questions on that? Okay, once you change over to your pipe thread, everything else is going to be pipe thread from there on out. Once you switch over to the pipe thread after your head unit, the rest of the fittings are going to be pipe thread from there on out. Alright, coming out of the pipe thread, you're going to need to get to your 1/2-inch drip pipe. I've got a picture of a brown fitting here. That is drip pipe insert, which just means it pushes into it on one side, and that is male pipe thread on the other side. That will screw into your head unit. Depending on what you use, you might have to use a threaded coupler, and it's going to be pipe thread on both sides just to convert from male to female. Is everybody clear on that? Okay, once you're through that, you're to your drip pipe. Now, drip pipe can be complicated because there are 50 different manufacturers making 50 different sizes. The kind I use on the commercial side always is the Rainbird XF pipe. It's pretty durable. It's brown. That doesn't really matter. But by sticking with one single pipe, one single brand of fittings, I don't have problems making connections. Some of the pipe is 16 millimeters, what it's called. Some is 17 millimeter. Some is 18 millimeter. Some of your fittings won't work back and forth between them. So my recommendation is pick a brand, Rainbird, Hunter, Jane, whatever brand you want to pick. Stick with that pipe and that fittings so things won't leak, basically. The pipe you will want to start with, it's called solid drip or blank drip. It has no holes in it. You'll come out of your head unit with that and run that over to your first plant. There are 100, 300, and 500 foot lengths you can get that pipe in. As long as you're not going further than 200 or 300 feet, that 1/2-inch pipe is sufficient for the amount of water you'll need to carry. My personal recommendation is the Rainbird XF series. They've got fittings that go with it, multiple types of fittings I'll talk about in a second. I've used the Hunter. It's fine too. All it is, it's just polyethylene pipe. There's nothing fancy about it, but you'll want to start off with solid or blank. So on the fittings, the Rainbird XF fittings, it's this picture I've got here. It is an insert fitting that pushes into the pipe, and if you've got your pressure reduced to 30 pounds, you do not need to clamp that at all. It will never come out. If you're using the correct size pipe, which is 17 millimeter on the Rainbird, you do not need to clamp that at all. Once you push it in, it's going to be hard to get it out, so before you push that in, be sure that's where you want the fitting to go. It can come out, but it's a fight. Rainbird does make a tool called a XF insertion tool to push those fittings in, because you kind of have to have strong hands to wiggle it into the pipe. Rainbird also has a couple of easier fittings to install. They're a little more expensive. They have the MDCF fitting, which is a push-on fitting, kind of like if you've messed with it at your house, a shark bite fitting. It just pushes over the pipe. There's parts inside that grab it and hold it in. Those fittings are a little more expensive. They won't come out either. It's a fight. Once you put it in, it's pretty much stuck there. Rainbird also, and several other companies make this too, a twist lock fitting. You insert the fitting in, and then there is kind of a cap that screws down and tightens and compresses it on. That's going to probably be your easiest fitting if you want to move and rearrange. Once again, you're getting a little bit more pricey on that. I know those the first fittings I talk about are about 40 to 50 cents per fitting. the Rainbird XF fittings. Once you get up to the MDCF and twist locks, you're at a couple dollars per fittings. And you will want to, when before you purchase this stuff, do a sketch, figure out how many fittings you're going to need, because the price can add up. But there'll be a combination of a few 90s, a few T's, depending on if you're branching off to several runs, running a straight run. But you will just want to draw out a little sketch, nothing complicated, maybe a full distance. You can pace it off. A pace is about 3 feet. That can get you pretty close to the length you want. So as you're installing that pipe, there's a picture of the drip pipe. I don't even know what brand that is, just a random generic drip pipe. That's what I refer to drip pipe. It's 1/2 inch. It's what you probably call, in your application, more of a trunk line. I'll get to that in a second. As you're installing that, it's hard to tell on this little picture, but that's a giant staple. It's about 5 or 6 inches tall, and if you're in decent soil, you can just push that down and it will hold your pipe in. On commercial installation, I'll put a staple every 2 to 3 feet. They're about a nickel a piece when we buy them by the pallet. That holds the pipe down, and we mulch over it, and that will hold it down in the mulch. But from experience, if you've got a lot of trees around and a lot of squirrels, they will eat this pipe like crazy. There's no way around it. They like to chew in it. They can smell the water. So when you do order your fittings, whatever type fitting you get you an extra 20 couplers, because you will need it for the squirrels. I have learned, if you mulch over it, the squirrels will find it. If you bury it about 3 inches deep, the squirrels will leave it alone for the most part. I would get some extra couplers. Squirrel chews into it, you just cut out the gnarled edges, put your fitting in there, put it back together. It takes 2 minutes and you're good to go, but you're gonna have to deal with the squirrels. I'm gonna finish the trunk line out, and then I'm gonna come back to the drip emitters and different options you've got on the on how to apply the water. So the only 2 other things I want to talk about on the trunk line are how to close it off at the end, and there are 2 ways to do that. Well, 3. So one, this figure 8 looking thing. It's got a real fancy name. It's called a figure 8. This drip pipe's pretty flexible, so all you do is push it through one side, kink it, pull it back through, it seals it off. It will not blow out as long as your pressure's below 40 pounds, which if you've got a filter pressure reducer, it will be. The other way to do it, which is what I do on my commercial sites just because it's convenient, you can take a piece of 1-inch pipe. We use 1-inch black polyethylene sometimes. You can take a 4-inch piece of that, kink your drip pipe over, cram it in there. It won't blow out, and you just pull it off and if you need to flush it out. The other option, Hunter makes one. It's called a PLD-BV. It's the same pipe size as the Rainbird stuff, so it'll match up, but Hunter's another manufacturer. It is a little 1/2-inch hand ball valve. And you can put that on the end of your line, which helps you on a couple things. If a squirrel chews into your line and you repair it, you're going to want to flush your line out before you use it to irrigate again. So all you've got to do is turn your water on, go to the end of the line. Actually, I'd go to the end of the line first, open your ball valve, turn your water on, and that will flush out any mulch or dirt or pieces of plastic that got in there. Close it back off and you're good to go. You can do the same thing with the figure 8. You just have to pull it up, pull it out, unkink it, let it flush out, put it back in. The little ball valves are about $4, I think. It's just a twist, open it, twist, close it. That's how you'll end your line. So that's the trunk line from start to finish. Does anybody have any questions on that? The only way for fringe protection on drip, on my commercial stuff, I hook a huge air compressor up and blow it out. On drip, that's not very healthy for the emitters we'll talk about in a minute. I've never had drip freeze and break. What you'll need to do is disconnect it from your faucet and open your drain on the end, or unkink your pipe on the end. That will let the majority of the water drain out. If water starts to freeze in that, since it's open, it will push the excess water out as it begins to expand. I've never had a drip emitter freeze, and drip pipe has some flexibility to it, so it would expand a little bit. But as long as your drip system, the water is not contained and locked in, you should be fine. So definitely disconnect it from the faucet or whatever water supply you're using. It will somewhat drain out itself through the drip emitters, but I would just open the end and let it drain out. But it's pretty resistant to freezing. One other thing I meant to talk about on the headline to keep in mind, you're kind of low on pressure. You're in the 25-30 psi range. If you're going up a steep hill from where you're starting to where your stuff's at, that's going to cost you more pressure. It's not exact, but the rule of thumb is for every foot you go straight up, don't count the slope, but straight up elevation, if you drew a line out from your highest point and went straight down, you're going to lose a half psi for every foot you're going up. So if you're going up on a 20-foot hill to where your plants are, you're going to lose 10 pounds of pressure getting there. If you're at 30 pounds, you'll still, at the start, you'll still have 20 pounds at the top where you start to water. You'll be okay then. But if you've got an 80-foot hill, talk to me or ask me a question about it, and that's a kind of a different thing to address. And also, I'd said earlier, if you're going 1,000 feet to your plants, that gets a little more complicated, and you can't feed that with the half-inch pipe. But a couple 100 feet, 5-foot hill, you're going to be fine. Anything more complicated, just ask me after this. So now to the fun part, the drip emitters, the part that actually you guys need to do something, need to work here. 1,000 ways to do it. I've got catalogs with 500 pages of all different types of drip emitters, drip sprayers, micro sprays, bubblers. All of them work. The one I recommend is just the one I've been using for 30 years because it's the most foolproof, and that is a punch-in drip emitter. And that picture is this big red one here. Now this one happens to be made by Rainbird. Rainbird's just the most common brand I use. There's also Toro I've never used. There's Hunter I use quite a bit. Jane makes these. A company called Antelco make these. They're all kind of the same. If you want to use a different brand, there's not much to it, but Rainbird's the one I use. This is a Rainbird. It's called a Zeribug, Z-E-R-I-B-U-G. You can get those in different flow rates. I like the Rainbird ones. They're color-coded. A blue one is a ½ gallon an hour on your water. And if you remember, you've got 5 gallons a minute, so you got a lot of water to work with. A solid black one in Rainbird is 1 gallon an hour. The red one is 2 gallons an hour. They go all the way up to 7 gallons an hour. I never use any. That puts water down too fast for what I'm trying to do, and probably what you guys are trying to do too. I would recommend the lower one, the slower flow rate. That gives your water more time to absorb than bubbling off the ground, but we'll get to that in a second. So multiple ways to hook those on. The way I do it on my commercial stuff is I use my trunk line, run it within a couple of inches of the plant, punch my drip emitter directly into the trunk line. You'll see on the right side, it's kind of got a pointed barb. If you push and twist, that will go straight into the ½ trunk line. But if you're doing more than a couple of them, you either need to, from experience, wrap duct tape around your hand or get, they make some tools to punch through. Fancy name, a punch tool. Your drip emitter sticks in one way, you push and twist. You can buy those, I've seen them at Lowe's, any irrigation distributor, get them online. It's just a drip punch tool. It's usually kind of a lavender color, the one I've seen. You just put the outlet part into the thing and push, and it goes in. You can also do it with wire pliers, as long as you don't damage your emitter. Those emitters are about the size of nickel, but if you're doing a few of them, you can do them by hand. Just push and twist and they'll pop right in. So I run my trunk line, weave it through to each plant, punch my drip emitter in, and you can see the water bubble out very slowly. I mean, it's only a half gallon, a gallon an hour, so it basically just glistens on the end. If you do that, put the emitter in at a 45-degree angle, not straight up. It is, somebody steps on it and it's straight up, it's going to break. If it's at a 45-degree angle or parallel with the ground, it's just going to push over. So don't put it straight up. That's the way I do it, but there might be a different way that I think you guys would probably want to do it, and it's the way Angel had talked about doing it at her house. So this picture right here, that looks big, but that's a 1/4 inch. That's smaller than a pencil. The way I think you guys are probably going to want to do your figs is to punch that into your trunk line. And then you'll feed some tubing to your emitter right in your pot, if you're in a pot, or right at your plant. But so when you push this through, if you're in a bind, you can do it with an ice pick or a small Phillips screwdriver. You have to pre-punch your hole because that is not barbed on either. It's barbed, it's not pointed. It will not punch itself. They make a special tool called a punch tool that pokes a hole in there. It looks like a C, got a little handle on the top. You just lock it over the pipe, push it through, punches a small hole. Like I said, you can do it with an ice pick. I've done thousands of those with an ice pick or a small Phillips screwdriver. Just don't use a large one, you'll get a little leakage on it. You punch your hole, you push that in, and then you use tubing called spaghetti tubing. Rainbird's brand is called XQ. It is 1/4 inch flexible tubing, comes in 100-foot rolls, pretty cheap, $15 for a 100-foot roll roughly, or you can get a 1,000-foot 5-gallon bucket full of the stuff, which is a lot. You probably will never need that much. So your spaghetti tubing, your barb here, one side's going to go into your 1/2-inch trunk line, either side depending on which one you get. Some are a little different on each side. The picture I got purposefully is the same on both sides. Push one side into your 1/2-inch drip pipe trunk line. On the other side, you'll put your spaghetti tubing on it. It's kind of a tight fit. You can use a little Dawn dish soap to make it go on a little bit easier. I will use a propane blowtorch to heat it up just a hair. You can do it with a lighter too. That's a hard squeeze to get on there. Yeah.
If you leave the tubing out in the sun, it makes it a lot easier to get on.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. On any of your soft pipes, be it the drip pipe, the spaghetti tubing, if you leave it outside, not today, but in the sun, all the flexible tubings get easier to work with. If you just pull it out of your basement and start working on it, it's going to be pretty stiff. But yeah, the sun does help quite a bit. When we're installing the 1-inch polyethylene pipe for our larger irrigations, we'll leave it sitting out we won't put it under a tree. We'll leave it to warm up. It just makes it easier to work with. And that'll be the case with the drip too. That's a real good point. I've done it with a lighter just to give it a couple passes with the lighter. We keep propane torches in our trucks for heating PVC pipe. Just a pass or two with that, it'll slide on a lot easier. Once you've got the spaghetti tubing on the barb, which is connected to your trunk line, you will run that to your plant. Whether a pot, pots, you'll definitely want to do it this way. If you're in the ground, you might want to put the emitter directly into the pipe, but that's doesn't matter either way. Once you get to your plant or to your pot, I've got a picture right here. Now, what I wanted to show you in that picture is the holder. That is just a spaghetti tube holder. That just holds it in place. Jane, Rainbird, Hunter all make those. You can also use one of the sod staples I showed you earlier. You're just wanting to hold it in place. You don't need it elevated up. It might make it a little bit easier to see, but you just need something to hold it in place. So at the end of your spaghetti line is where you'll want to put your drip emitter. Once again, you'll need to put some Dawn dishwash detergent on it, a lighter, a torch, or the sun to slide the spaghetti tubing on the barbed end of your drip emitter. Use the staple to hold it in place. So when you turn your system on, you will see basically just glistening off the end of that drip emitter at your plant. You can do this multiple. If you have a larger pot, you can get tees for the spaghetti tubing to tee around to multiple sides to get a more even distribution. But when you do that, keep in mind how much water you're putting out on your plant. You don't want to drown it. So if you use, on my commercial side, I use always the 1 gallons. It's easiest math. So if you're using a 1 gallon per hour emitter, that's going to put 1 gallon in a 1 foot area right by your plant. When the water spreads from a drip emitter, it cones down a little bit, but basically you're going to be within a foot of that drip emitter. So if you tee off your spaghetti line and put another drip emitter on, now you're getting 2 gallons an hour. So if you wanted 1 gallon of water, you'd run it half as long if you have two drip emitters. If you've got a really large pot, you could do 3, 4, however many you wanted to. Just keep the math in mind. It's pretty simple addition. If you've got 4 half-gallon emitters, you've got 2 gallons an hour of water coming out. And all these numbers I'm giving you are gallons per hour. When we did the bucket at the beginning, that's gallons per minute. So your total capacity, all the water you've got to work with is your bucket, 5 gallons in a minute, times minutes in an hour, 60. You've got 300 gallons an hour of total capacity on a system. If you're doing 1 emitter per tree, I mean that's 300 trees. I don't know if any of you guys are setting up full nurseries. If you are, we can talk it because it's a little more complicated. But if you've got 20 trees, 40 trees, you really don't even need to consider how much total water you're using. The half-inch trunk line will flow about 4 gallons a minute. That's 240 gallons an hour. So there's a lot of wiggle room if you're setting one up this way. If you get into something huge, just drop me an email or ask me about it. Just so you know, this little picture on here, that thing on the end is called a bug cap. It keeps bugs from crawling into your spaghetti tubing. I've never had a problem with that. I don't know, but you can put the emitter itself on the trunk line and run the spaghetti tubing up to your plant. I just prefer to put the emitter on the end. You can see it. You can see the color coding. It doesn't get buried. When you bury this for squirrels, if you do, you can bury this 1/4 inch plug into your trunk line with it. It might drip very, very little, but it's not going to be enough to hurt anything. The squirrels will get into your spaghetti tubing also. I love animals. I hate squirrels. They just destroy everything in my yard. They've eaten into my attic. They've destroyed my drip system. They dig in my mulch. They need to be kept in zoos and away from my house. But squirrels will damage it, so just keep some spares. This barb that we use to start is also just a plain coupler for your spaghetti tubing, and those are 20 cents a piece, so I'd get an extra 20 of those also just for squirrel damage. I've seen mice do a little bit also, but and then don't let your dog get a hold of this stuff. He'll have a field day with it, but mostly squirrels. That is the basic setup for just a plain simple drip system. There are several options that you might want to consider, and I've put those on the back. This picture of the brown pipe, that is drip pipe that has emitters built into it. You can use that, but you would not want to do your entire run all the way from the faucet with that, because you're putting a lot of water out where you've got nothing growing but weeds and grass. You can tee and wrap that around a bush all by itself, but you'd have to have the solid line, tee off of it, and wrap around it. That's one option. I really don't like to use that. The emitters come pre-installed, built into the pipe, 12 inches, 18 inches, or 24 inches apart. So if you're putting it on a row of trees, your trees have to line up perfectly for an emitter to be close enough to a tree to get it. You're wasting all the water in between if you just go with a straight line on it. If you do use that, you can get different flow rates. You can get a 0.6 gallon an hour and a 0.9 gallon an hour. That gets a little more complicated. It uses a lot of water. That might make it more water than you're getting through your faucet, so I would probably recommend staying away from that for this application. The other picture I've got on there is a little microspray stake. It's right here. The piece off to the right side is just a barb that you twist off of that. That's just the way it ships. It's not attached to it, not part of it. You twist it off, you use that to poke into your trunk line. That is a microspray. If you look at that picture, the top is adjustable. Screws on, screws off. It will go all the way from off to a circle about this big. If you want to see your water spray, that is a good option, except you don't know exactly how much water you're putting out. You know the maximum if it's wide open, but you don't know if you got it cut down half, you don't know if that's truly half. So if you're trying to be real precise with your water application, that's probably not a good one for you. I will use that if I've got a few planters or hanging pots that I need to irrigate. Not real precise, but it does get the job done. That's a stake made by Hunter, Rainbird, and Antoco. I think they're all made in the same factory and stamped with a different name. That's just HSB stake is what it's called. There are also other types of microspray. Jane makes some. I'm sure you guys have seen them in yards and stuff. 12-inch tall stake, a little red or yellow colored head on top, sprays the water out 4 to 5 feet. Those are options too. The problem with those in your application is you're shooting a lot of water past your existing root zone, especially if you're in pots and stuff. You're shooting a lot of water over it. You can put it in and angle it down to keep all your water contained there. I would stay away from those for your applications also, and stick to the drip. It's real precise. You're not wasting a lot of water, and you've got a lot of control over how much water you're putting down. So on your timer, you'd set it to run for an hour. If you do it by hand, you just set your clock, you go run it for an hour, come turn it off. You know every bush got exactly 1 gallon, or every tree got exactly 1 gallon of water. And for a fruit tree like the figs, that's probably going to be best just to go with the drip emitters. Then the one other picture, and I've not done this a lot, I'm familiar with it. fertilizer injectors. There are several brands that make these. You can get them 100% organic. I've seen some use fish emulsion, which is ground up fish bones and skins left over from the canneries. The ladies in here in the nursery swear by the fish emulsion, but I've used it too. It does seem to work real well. But these will go probably right before your filter. Nothing in that is going to, unless you're making your own fertilizer, nothing's going to clog up the filter. It is a 1/4 inch tube that runs into your line on one side and a 1/4 inch tube that runs in on the other, and it basically functions like those old Miracle Grow things. You'd screw them into your hose and it had a bucket on the bottom. Everybody familiar with those? Just injects a little water comes out. There are several brands of those. They can get pretty expensive. And then the fertilizer, if you're buying the stuff that's pre-mixed, then that can get pretty expensive too. I think Earthway might be a brand I've sold before. You could get the organic fertilizer. I think it was about $80 for a 2.5 gallon jug, but on an application like this, that would probably last you multiple years. It goes through with the water. Yeah, it dilutes through there's a little manifold in the middle that will go in the middle of your lines that dilutes it as it goes. The bucket stays full of the concentrate, but you're running a 1/4 inch line into it to add water, and then you've got a 1/4 inch coming out to add water, so it dilutes it itself on a lot of those I've seen. Because if you were, there'd be no way to. It'd be a nightmare to have to. Okay, I've seen them before with a dial. You go into your line. It's the ones I've seen are a little manifold with some have some control dials that control what percentage of water, like she's talking about, what percentage of fertilizer. I have seen a fertilizer that doesn't need to be diluted. I mean, you could just pour that stuff on each plant, but it runs through there a little more freely. There are a lot of options on those fertigation, is what it's called, systems, but you're basically putting fertilizer out with your water every time you run it. It does have ball valves on the system there. It's not showing, but you do have ball valves so you can isolate it off if you've gotten enough fertilizer. I've also seen, which you're not going to want to use this on your trees, I've seen some organic insecticides that run through those too. I don't think you guys would want to mess with that, but the fertilizer, there's a lot of options, a lot of different brands. You're just going to have to get online and research those. I've messed with a couple, but that's not really something we see a lot on commercial job sites. All right, so that's all I had to talk about. So now I'm open to any questions you have about this, or for that matter, any irrigation you got. Thank you.